The generous offer, the massive Zephyrian dreadnought, cast its shadow across Earth's orbital stations like a metallic eclipse. Its hull, polished to mirror perfection, reflected the blue marble of humanity's homeworld with an almost mocking beauty. Chancellor Varric stood at the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel, his tall, crystalline form shimmering with the internal light that marked his species' emotional state. Today, that light pulsed with confident satisfaction. Such a young species, he murmured to his aide, watching the tiny human shuttles scurry between their primitive stations. So much potential, yet so vulnerable. They should be grateful for what we offer. The human delegation had arrived punctually at the neutral meeting point, a converted asteroid station floating in the space between Earth and Mars. President Sarah Chen led the group, her weathered face showing the strain of leading humanity through its first major interstellar crisis. Behind her walked General Torres, Admiral Kim, and Dr. Elizabeth Warren, Earth's foremost xenobiologist. The conference room aboard the Zephyrian vessel was a marvel of alien architecture. Walls that seemed to flow like liquid metal displayed star charts and data streams in languages humanity was still learning to decipher. Chancellor Varric took his position at the head of the table, his form towering nearly 9 feet tall, skin like living glass filled with swirling nebulae of blue and silver light. Esteemed representatives of humanity, Varric began, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that made Zephyrian speech sound like a choir of crystal bells. We come with an offer that has brought peace and prosperity to over 800 species across 47 sectors of this galaxy. President Chen leaned forward slightly, her hands folded calmly on the table. We're listening, Chancellor. Varric activated a holographic display that filled the room with a map of local space. Red zones pulsed ominously around various star systems, while areas of peaceful blue surrounded worlds marked with the Zephyrian Commonwealth symbol. Your species has taken its first steps into the greater cosmos, Varric continued. But space is dangerous for those who venture alone. Pirate armadas roam the shipping lanes. Rogue artificial intelligences consume entire civilizations. Ancient war machines drift between the stars, still fighting conflicts from species long extinct. Just last century, the promising Keller Republic expanded too quickly, too boldly. Their homeworld is now nothing but radioactive ash. The hologram zoomed to show the devastation of former civilizations, worlds stripped bare or reduced to glowing cinders. General Torres shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but President Chen's expression remained neutral. However, Varric's light shifted too. Warm gold, under Zephyrian protection, species thrive. Our defensive networks have maintained peace for millennia. Our trade routes boost planetary economies by 3,000% on average. Our technological sharing programs advance client species by centuries in mere decades. Dr. Warren spoke up, and what would be required of humanity in return? Very reasonable terms, Varric assured her. You would transfer military command to our experienced admirals. Allow our governors to oversee colonial expansion for optimal security, and channel your trade through our established, protected routes. Your people would maintain complete cultural autonomy and local governance. Think of us as helpful elder siblings, guiding you through the galaxy's dangers. Admiral Kim's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. President Chen noticed, but gave no outward reaction. This is indeed a generous offer, Chen said carefully. Such a significant decision requires proper consideration by our Global Council and colonial representatives. Varric's light pulsed with what humans were learning to recognize as slight annoyance. President Chen, surely you understand the urgency. Every day you delay protection is another day your species remains vulnerable. The recent pirate activity in the Rigel sector alone, I appreciate your concern, Chen interrupted gently. But humanity values deliberation in important matters. We would need 1 standard year to properly evaluate this proposal and prepare for such a significant transition. The Zephyrian delegation exchanged glances, their internal lights flickering in patterns that Dr. Warren was just beginning to interpret as their equivalent of whispered conversation. Very well, Varric conceded, though his light had shifted to a cooler blue. 1 year. But understand, we cannot be responsible for whatever befalls humanity during this period of consideration. As the human delegation returned to their shuttle, none of them spoke until they were well clear of Zephyrian sensors. Then Admiral Kim let out a breath he'd been holding for the entire meeting. Protection racket, he said grimly. Oldest scam in the book, just scaled up to galactic proportions. President Chen nodded slowly. The question is, what happened to the species that said no? Dr. Warren pulled up her tablet, already displaying preliminary research. I've been analyzing the historical data they showed us. Every single pirate attack or system failure they mentioned happened to species that initially refused their protection. The timing is too convenient to be coincidence. General Torres cracked his knuckles, a habit that emerged when he was planning something the enemy wouldn't like. So what's the plan? We obviously can't fight their entire fleet. President Chen looked out at the stars, her mind already racing ahead to possibilities the Zephyrians couldn't imagine. We do exactly what they expect us to do. We wait, we consider. We appear to comply with their advisory oversight. And what do we actually do? Admiral Kim asked. Chen smiled, and something in that expression reminded them all why she'd been elected to lead humanity through its greatest challenges. We prepare, quietly, carefully, and very, very thoroughly. The year that followed was one of apparent cooperation and hidden revolution. Zephyrian observers were welcomed to human colonies and facilities, where they saw exactly what humanity wanted them to see. Mining operations that appeared focused on basic expansion, shipyards, producing vessels that looked purely civilian, research stations working on seemingly academic projects. What they didn't see was the real work happening in asteroid bases, on hidden stations beyond the outer planets, and in the deep space construction yards that operated under perfect electromagnetic silence. Humanity had learned stealth from its own history of warfare, and they applied those lessons on an interstellar scale. Commander Lisa Rodriguez oversaw the Titan project from a facility carved into the ice of Europa. Her team worked around the clock, developing technologies that pushed the boundaries of human understanding. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, studying the wreckage of ancient automated probes that had been drifting through the outer system for millennia. The energy patterns are unlike anything we've seen, Dr. James Park explained to the assembled team. These probes use a form of dimensional manipulation that makes them nearly undetectable. If we can revert the process. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, General Torres was building something the galaxy had never seen, a truly distributed defense network. Rather than massive ships that could be tracked and targeted, humanity was constructing thousands of small, mobile platforms that could coordinate their actions across vast distances. Think of it like an immune system, he explained to the other military leaders. Individual cells that can recognize threats and respond collectively without needing a central brain that can be cut off. The most crucial work, however, was being done by teams of diplomats and intelligence officers who were making contact with species throughout the galaxy. Not the official government that had signed protection agreements with the Zephyrians, but the underground networks, the resistance movements, the peoples who remembered what freedom felt like. Captain Maria Santos, humanity's most gifted xeno, had made contact with 17 different resistance cells. Each represented species that had once been independent, now chafing under Zephyrian protection. "They're all waiting for someone to make the first move," she reported to President Chen during one of their encrypted communications. "The Zephyrians have convinced the galaxy that resistance is impossible, but these people haven't forgotten how to fight. They just need to see it can be done." As the months passed, Zephyrian observers began to notice subtle changes in human behavior. Their communication networks had become more sophisticated. Their shipping patterns showed unusual efficiency. Most concerning of all, their expansion rate had somehow doubled, despite supposedly focusing on defensive considerations. Admiral Kenth, commander of the Zephyrian monitoring fleet, found himself increasingly troubled by what he was seeing. "Commander Zara," he called to his intelligence officer. "These humans, their resource extraction rates are exceeding projections by 300%. Perhaps they're simply more industrious than most species," Zara suggested, though her own light flickered with uncertainty. "Or perhaps they're preparing for something," Kenth mused. "Have you noticed how their cargo vessels move? To precisely coordinated for civilian traffic. And these research stations of theirs, the power signatures don't match their stated purposes." But when Zephyrian inspectors arrived at human facilities, they found exactly what they expected: bustling colonies focused on growth and development, research stations working on terraforming and agricultural improvements, shipyards producing the vessels needed for a growing interstellar civilization. What they couldn't see were the quantum communication networks hidden in asteroid debris, the weapon platforms disguised as mining equipment, or the training facilities where humans and their alien allies were learning to fight as a unified force. The most remarkable thing, however, was humanity's patience. Species throughout the galaxy had learned to fear Zephyrian displeasure, to rush into agreements to avoid their wrath. But humans seemed uniquely capable of playing a long game, of enduring uncertainty and pressure while they prepared for whatever came next. President Chen had instituted what she privately called the silent vigil. Humanity would watch, wait, and prepare while giving their enemies no cause for premature action. It was a strategy that required tremendous discipline and faith, but it was quintessentially human in its stubborn refusal to be rushed into submission. As the year drew to its close, Chancellor Varric reviewed the reports from his observers with growing satisfaction. The humans had been remarkably compliant, allowing Zephyrian oversight and accepting advisory suggestions about their development. Their military remained fragmented among various national and colonial forces. Their expansion, while rapid, followed predictable patterns focused on resource extraction and population growth. "They will accept," he told his council with confidence. "They have seen the galaxy's dangers and the benefits of our protection. Like all young species, they will choose security over the illusion of independence." But in the hidden depths of human space, something unprecedented was taking shape. Not just a military force, but a new kind of alliance built on principles the galaxy had almost forgotten. Species that had thought themselves broken were discovering they could still fight. Peoples that had accepted their fate were remembering. They had choices, and at the center of it all, humanity waited with the patience of a species that had learned to plan not just years ahead, but generations. They had been underestimated before, and they understood exactly how to use that advantage. The time for silence was almost over. Asterisk, the revelation, the conference chamber, aboard. Harmony Station gleamed with diplomatic polish, its neutral lighting, designed to be comfortable for dozens of different species. 1 year to the day after their first meeting, the human and Zephyrian delegations faced each other across the same table, where countless other species had surrendered their independence. Chancellor Varric's crystalline form pulsed with confident, golden light as he reviewed the protection agreement displayed in the air between them. President Chen sat quietly, her small delegation arranged around her with the same calm composure they'd shown 12 months earlier. President Chen Varric began, his harmonic voice carrying undertones of benevolent authority. I trust your year of consideration has been enlightening. The galaxy is indeed a dangerous place for those who stand alone. Chen nodded slowly. It has been very enlightening, Chancellor. We've learned a great deal about galactic politics. Excellent. Then you're ready to formalize humanity's membership in the Commonwealth. I've taken the liberty of preparing the final documents. The holographic display shifted to show signature fields and ceremonial seals. A simple formality, really. Your species will benefit immensely from our guidance. Admiral Kim shifted slightly in his chair, but his expression remained neutral. Dr. Warren appeared to be studying her tablet, though her fingers weren't moving across its surface. General Torres sat like a statue, his weathered hands folded calmly on the table. Chancellor Varric, President Chen said finally, humanity has indeed made its decision regarding your generous offer. Varric's light brightened expectantly, and we respectfully decline. The silence that followed seemed to stretch across light years. Varric's internal luminosity flickered through several rapid color changes before settling into a confused blue-white. Patton, I'm sorry, he said slowly. I believe there was a translation error. You said you decline. That's correct. Humanity chooses to remain independent. The other Zephyrian delegates began displaying the rapid light patterns that Dr. Warren had learned to recognize as their equivalent of urgent whispers. Admiral Kemph, who had been monitoring human space all year, leaned forward with his combat. Implants automatically activating, President Chen Varric said, his voice carrying new harmonics of barely controlled frustration. I don't think you fully comprehend the implications of this decision. Without Commonwealth protection, humanity will not survive. The galaxy will devour your species within decades. Chen smiled then, and something in that expression made every Zephyrian in the room suddenly alert. Admiral Kemph, tell me, in your year of observing human space, did you notice anything unusual about our activities? Kent's form stiffened. Your species has been remarkably industrious. Perhaps too industrious for a people supposedly considering surrender. Surrender, Chen repeated thoughtfully. An interesting choice of words. But you're right, we have been busy. May I show you what we've accomplished? Without waiting for permission, Chen activated her own holographic display. The chamber filled with a three-dimensional map of local space, but this one showed details that made the Zephyrian observers visibly react. Red dots marked every Zephyrian Commonwealth territory. Blue dots showed independent species that had declined protection. But there was a crucial difference from the map Varric had shown a year earlier. The blue dots weren't disappearing. Instead, they were multiplying. During our year of consideration, Chen continued, we conducted extensive research into galactic history. Would you like to know what we discovered? The map shifted to show temporal overlays, tracking the fate of independent species over the past several centuries. Every species that had initially refused Zephyrian protection had indeed faced catastrophic attacks within 50 years. But the timing, the nature of the attacks, and the convenient arrival of Commonwealth forces to offer aid painted a very different picture than random pirate raids. The Keller Republic, Chen said, highlighting one system, destroyed by rogue AI attacks that stopped the moment they agreed to protection. The Meridian Alliance, devastated by pirate raids using ships that somehow had Zephyrian power signatures. The Spiral Federation lost 3 colonies to mysterious system failures that engineering analysis shows were clearly sabotage. Varric's light had shifted to angry red. These are serious accusations, President Chen. Unsubstantiated claims. Oh, they're quite substantiated, Dr. Warren interrupted, speaking for the first time. We've spent the year building quantum communication networks with resistance movements across 47 systems. We have eyewitness accounts, sensor logs, and pattern analysis that would hold up in any court in the galaxy. The map shifted again, now showing a web of connections spreading across known space. Hundreds of species, thought to be firmly under Zephyrian control, were revealed to be part of a vast underground network. The protection racket ends here, Chen said quietly. Admiral Kenneth reached for his sidearm, but found his hand frozen in place. Around the table, every Zephyrian delegate discovered they couldn't move. Localized neural inhibitor field, General Torres explained casually. Dr. Patel's team developed it specifically for diplomatic situations. Perfectly harmless, but it prevents hostile actions. We developed it after studying Zephyrian neurophysiology for the past year. Chen stood, walking to the viewing port that showed the space around Harmony Station. You see, Chancellor, you made a crucial error in judgment. You assumed that because humanity was young, we were naive. Because we were small, we were weak. Because we asked for time to consider, we were stalling in fear. Outside the viewing port, space itself seemed to shimmer. Suddenly, dozens of ships appeared where moments before there had been empty void. Sleek human vessels, but also ships from species the Zephyrians thought they controlled completely. Adaptive camouflage, Admiral Kim explained. Based on technology, we reverse-engineered from ancient probe remnants in our outer system. Your sensors can't detect ships using our stealth protocols. The display of ships continued growing. Hundreds, then thousands of vessels decloaked around the station and throughout the surrounding space. A fleet larger than anything the Zephyrians had seen outside their own main battle groups. Impossible, Varric whispered. Our monitoring satellites would have detected construction on this scale. Your monitoring satellites, Captain Santos said, entering the chamber with a smile, have been feeding you fabricated data for 8 months. We've been very careful to show you exactly what we wanted you to see. Chen returned to her seat, her expression calm but implacable. The galaxy is about to change, Chancellor. Humanity won't just defend itself. We'll defend anyone who wants to be free. As if summoned by her words, new signals began appearing on the Zephyrian monitors. Across dozens of systems, resistance movements were activating simultaneously. Species that had been protected for centuries were openly declaring independence. The careful order that the Zephyrian Commonwealth had maintained for millennia was crumbling in real time. This is insurrection, Admiral Kenneth snarled, though he still couldn't move. The Commonwealth will not tolerate the Commonwealth, Chen interrupted, will adapt to the new reality, because you have a choice to make right now. The chamber's displays shifted to show the Zephyrian reinforcement fleets that were racing toward the station. Massive dreadnoughts and carrier groups, enough firepower to crack planets. But they weren't alone. For every Commonwealth ship, 3 others flanked it. Vessels from species thought firmly under Zephyrian control, but now openly flying the colors of the new resistance. Your own protected species are abandoning you, Dr. Warren observed. Turns out, when people see that freedom is possible, they remember why they wanted it in the first place. How? Varric asked, his voice barely above a whisper. How did you coordinate this across so many species, so many light? Quantum entanglement communication networks, Torres replied. Built into seemingly harmless mining equipment and research stations, every human colony became a node in a galactic internet that your people couldn't detect or intercept. Chen leaned forward. But the real secret wasn't technology, Chancellor. It was patience. You've grown used to species that panic, that rush into your protection out of fear. Humanity learned a long time ago that sometimes the best strategy is to wait, watch, and prepare while your enemy assumes you're defeated. The neural inhibitor field deactivated, and the Zephyrian delegates found they could move again. But weapons seemed pointless now, surrounded by overwhelming numbers and facing a revolution that had clearly been planned with meticulous care. What do you want? Varric asked finally. True peace, Chen replied. Not the peace of submission, but the peace of mutual respect and cooperation. The Commonwealth can be part of that future, but only if you abandon the protection racket and start treating other species as equals. The displays around them shifted to show a new map of galactic politics. Instead of red zones of control and blue zones of vulnerability, there were networks of alliance and cooperation. Defensive pacts based on mutual benefit rather than imposed authority. We're offering you a choice that you never gave others, Chen continued. Join a galactic community based on cooperation and respect, or face the consequences of centuries of oppression finally coming home. Varric looked around the chamber, at the displays showing his crumbling empire, at the faces of species he'd thought permanently conquered, now standing as equals rather than subjects. This will change everything, he said. Yes, Chen agreed. It will. The question is whether you'll be part of building something better, or part of the old system that's already dying. As the Zephyrian delegation contemplated humanity's ultimatum, messages were flowing across the galaxy at quantum speeds. Species that hadn't spoken their own names in centuries were remembering their cultures. Worlds that had accepted their fate as permanent subjects were declaring independence. And at the center of it all, a young species that had been dismissed as naive and weak was showing the galaxy that sometimes the greatest strength comes from knowing when to wait. The age of galactic empires was ending. The age of galactic cooperation was about to begin, and humanity, patient and methodical as always, had positioned itself not as the new overlords, but as the architects of something unprecedented, a galaxy where protection didn't require surrender, where strength served justice, and where even the youngest species could stand as equals among the stars. The silent vigil was over. The real work was just beginning. Asterisk.